It's another week. The weekend is officially in the books. It's Monday. That means one thing. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Happy Monday. I hope you guys have had an amazing weekend, and I hope the start of your week is off to a great start. It is Monday, October 7th, 2024, which means it's time for another episode of Monday Evening Quarterback. My name is Christian Simpson, and I am the creator, I'm the founder, I'm the NFL and college football analyst of a brand called The Daily Blitz, where we specialize in all things football 24/7, 365, and I have a jam-packed show for you today. What a topsy-turvy weekend in college football it was. I have a lot to say about that. As usual, another wild and what some people on social media call it drunk day in the NFL. We're going to go to the phone lines. We're going to answer some questions. I'm going to promote how you can keep up with me on social media and how you can tune into me to all the other shows I contribute for through the airwaves. If you've been following along from the get-go, as always, thank you so very much for your continued support. And if this is your first time tuning in and you were referred to me, one, thank you for taking the referral. Two, thank you to whoever referred you to me. And if you are liking what you are hearing, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Monday Evening Quarterback is on Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, Blog Talk Radio, and the Nerdport Network. I am solo today, no Ronnie, but I will hold down the fort. With that being said, let's get right into it. Can you believe we're in week 6 of college football? This was considered a boring week in the sport. Yeah, the games may have not been eye-popping and they didn't grab your attention right away on the schedule, but still, football is football, as far as I look at it. That's the best way I could describe it. Ole Miss did bounce back against South Carolina. Jackson Dart was 14-27 for 285 yards, and they did it with defense as well. South Carolina, having a chance to see them a couple weeks ago and cover one of their games. I was impressed, but I knew they weren't ready to necessarily sit at the table with the big boys. Good bounce back win for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels, because they got kicked in the teeth against Kentucky last weekend. As I said at the top of the show, this was a very topsy-turvy, crazy weekend of college football, and there were a lot of upsets galore. Let's get the obvious out the way. Alabama, Vanderbilt. Alabama's the number 1 ranked team in college football. Tell me when you've heard that before. Tell me a time when you haven't heard that. Vanderbilt plays teams tough. I will say that much. Alabama coming off a high, winning that game against Georgia the week before. And I think they were still celebrating that last win. You can't sit here and tell me otherwise. Jalen Milroe, the stats look good. 18-24, 310 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Where Vanderbilt shut him down was keeping him in the pocket because he only had 10 yards rushing. And if you've watched as much Jalen Milroe as I have, he can do it as consistently with his legs as he does his arm. He's truly a dual threat. He could have 2 touchdowns passing and then 2 rushing. This had trap game written all over it. Vanderbilt came into this game with everything to lose and nothing to gain. And Diego Pavia, 16 of 20, 252 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's the thing about playing Alabama. You can't turn the ball over on them because they will make you pay, and they will force you to. They will capitalize upon your mistake. That's the best way I could put it. Just a shocker, but the funny thing that happened with this was, I don't know if you guys heard, but Nick Saban, he and Pat McAfee, I guess you can call it a podcast, but they do it every week where they are for College Game Day. And Nick Saban made a comment about Vanderbilt and them just not being good, and Vanderbilt trolled him at the end of the game and played that quote at the end of the game through the sound system in the stadium. But Vanderbilt, arguably the biggest win of the year. They beat Alabama by a score of 40-35. I wonder where Alabama goes from here. I know Georgia bounced back against Auburn in the Deep South's oldest rivalry. This rivalry's been going on for quite some time. They got back to their winning ways. Carson Beck. Now, this is the Carson Beck I know. On Saturday, he completed 23 of his 29 pass attempts, 240 yards, and the 2 touchdowns. And Georgia got back to running the football. 37 carries as a team, 141 yards as a team. Trevor Etienne, 16 carries, 88 yards. Yeah. And you knew Georgia was going to come into this game a little pissed off because of how they looked the week before against Tuscaloosa. Sometimes you just got to put some things behind you and move forward, and that's exactly what they did. I'm sure Kirby was instilling that in them, but Georgia did get back to the winning side of things. Ohio State handled business against Iowa 35-7. Game was never close. Will Howard, 21-25, 209 yards passing with the 4 touchdowns. Penn State handled their business against UCLA. I want to go back to the SEC. One of the games I previewed on the site was Missouri and Texas A&M. It's going to be my first time getting to see Brady Cook and Luther Burden III. Luther is considered to be the best wide receiver in college football. And coming into this game, I kept saying about Missouri, you can't get off to sloppy starts and expect to get back into the game, because there's going to be that one team that's truly going to keep you from climbing the ladder to get back into this game. And boy, did Missouri look bad. They were down 24-0 at the half. They didn't score their first touchdown until the third quarter, and then they were shut down in the fourth quarter. Texas A&M, this is a big win for them. They win by a score of 41-10. Marcel Reed did start this game. Then I believe he got injured, if I'm not mistaken. Connor Wegman came in, 18-22, 276 yards, and Le'Veon Moss, 12 carries, 138 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Texas A&M just kept their foot on the necks of Missouri, and Missouri could just never recover. See what happens when you punch a team in the mouth and they're not used to physicality, because that's exactly what happened. This is football. But Le'Veon Moss was one of the stars of this game, and as a team, Texas A&M ran the ball for 236 yards on 36 carries, 6 yards per attempt. And they scored 5 touchdowns on the ground. Because Amari Daniels had 2 and Le'Veon had 3. Luther Burden was kept in check for most of this game. 7 receptions, 82 yards. Just couldn't get it done. Brady Cook didn't look all that great either. 13 of 31. 186 yards passing and 1 touchdown. No, he didn't throw an interception, but at the end of the day, you lost the football game. Oregon handled their business against Michigan State, and they didn't look ahead. Because they have a huge game coming up this weekend against the Ohio State Buckeyes, one that I will be previewing. One that I will be previewing for sure. Sticking with the SEC, the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, you guys know I've been high on this team throughout the year. Seeing them play against North Carolina State in week 2, and then seeing them play against Oklahoma a couple of weeks ago. And I got to give Oklahoma credit because Oklahoma kind of unveiled the blueprint on how to stop them. Because you look at every game prior to the Oklahoma game, they scored 30 or more. Against the Sooners and Norman, they were held to 25 points. Off the bye week, go to Arkansas to face the Razorbacks. And, of course, they were a big favorite. But, again, this is football where the unexpected could happen. Nico Iamaleava. I've been practicing in case you couldn't tell, because if this were weeks ago, before I previewed the game against North Carolina State, I just would have called him Nico, but I've truly been practicing. Nico Iamaleava, 17 of 29, 158 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. Dylan Sampson, to me, is the best player on this Tennessee team, and he did his part. 22 carries, 138 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just looked like the passing game for Tennessee couldn't get done, and Arkansas said, if you're going to beat us, you're going to beat us by running the football. Taylon Green on the Arkansas side, 19 of 27, 266 yards passing, no touchdowns, no interceptions, and Braylon Russell was the leading rusher for Arkansas, and Jaquindon Jackson, that's the star, 20 carries, 57 yards, and 1 touchdown. Yeah, give Arkansas a lot of credit. They kept everything underneath. And I thought that was the difference maker for Arkansas. So down goes Tennessee, Alabama, 9th-ranked Missouri. In the Big Ten, there was a national title game rematch. Now, we don't get these a lot, but when we do, you look forward to them. You look forward to them. And Michigan was playing Washington for the first time since the Natty that took place in Houston on January 8th. Both these teams are completely different now. Michigan had so much firepower last year. Cornelius Johnson, Jake Butt, Colston Loveland. Correct me there. Colston Loveland. Jake Butt played years ago. Washington had a lot of firepower too, and they were well coached. Kalen DeBoer, Michael Penix Jr., Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Dylan Johnson. And remember, Michigan also had Jim Harbaugh as their head coach. Jim is now the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, and Kalen is now the head coach in Tuscaloosa. He succeeded Nick Saban. And just looking at this game, one thing that really stood out to me was Michigan doesn't have the weapons nor the quarterback to really win a game in the air. They're going to ground and pound. They're going to do it with a strong running game. They'll do it with defense and special teams, strong offensive line play, and good things are going to happen. They even started another quarterback on Saturday in Jack Tuttle, because Alex Orji ain't it. I'm just going to be real. Washington has a pretty good quarterback themselves, and he goes by the name of Will Rogers. Yes, that Will Rogers from Mississippi State. They don't need him to necessarily take games over because Washington has one of the best running backs that you never really hear about, and that's Jonah Coleman. He went 18 carries for 80 yards. But Will Rogers, 21 of 31, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he was my X factor coming into this game. Donovan Edwards on the Michigan side, 95 yards on 14 carries. But they just don't have the quarterback play that they did last year. J.J. McCarthy isn't walking through that door anytime soon. Michigan was ranked number 10. They go across the country to Seattle and lose to the Washington Huskies by a score of 27-17. This is the most games Michigan's lost since 2020. Another upset that happened in the Big Ten, Minnesota beating up on USC 24-17. I like what I've seen from Miller Moss, but he just couldn't get the job done. On Saturday night, he was 23 of 38, 200 yards passing. Woody Marks, 20 carries, 134 yards. Rushing in the 1 touchdown. Kyron Hudson, remember, he made that phenomenal catch in week 1 against LSU. 5 receptions, 54 yards, your leading receiver. On the Minnesota side, they just needed Max Brosma to kind of control things, not take the game over, just put the team in the best position to win, and everybody will do the rest. And he did just that, 15 of 19, 169 yards. And Darius Taylor, you know my rule. You better have game. If you have 2 first names, it's only right. 25 carries, $144. Average almost 6 yards per carry. USC has a weakness. They can't stop the run. Michigan exploited that a couple weeks ago because Michigan kept pretty much saying it without saying it. We're going to run this football. We're going to run it down your throat, and we're going to run it until you can do something about it. And USC's defense actually didn't do pretty bad in this game, but he still lost the football game. Excuse me. At the end of the day. Penn State handled business against UCLA, 27-11. Clemson handled business against a very bad Florida State team. Iowa State, they're 5-0, and you don't hear anything about them. Winning by 22, 43-21. And Boise State putting up 62 on Utah and Ashton Jeanty. I can't say enough about this guy. Best running back in college football. And at this point, I don't even think it's close. 13 carries, 186 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Last week, I said Jalen Milroe was my favorite, but I might have to put Ashton up there. And I wonder if my man Israel Rivera would agree with that. But one of the other crazy games that happened took place in California. Miami Hurricanes, California Golden Bears. Don't look now, but Miami's 6-0. And they look pretty damn good. Cam Ward is playing at a Heisman level. 35 of 53, 437 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Mark Fletcher Jr., 11 carries, 81 yards, and 1 touchdown. And Xavier Restrepo, 7 receptions, 163 yards, no touchdowns. He was your leading receiver. Then on the California side, California played this game tough because they looked to be up by quite a bit at one point. At one time, they were up 7, 10, 18, 7, 21. They were up by 17 points, and then Miami really burst onto the scene and pulled away in the fourth quarter to get back into this game. 39-38. Fernando Mendoza, 11 of 22, 285 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Jonathan Brady. Man, California really couldn't rush the football like that. What a game. And I don't think a lot of people were expecting this one to be the thriller that it was. What a day of college football. I think this is a weekend of college football we're going to be talking about for quite some time. Before we go to the phone lines and before we answer some questions and talk about the National Football League, let's look at the AP poll for college football, because you knew there was going to be a changing of everything with so many top teams losing and so many top teams going down. So I'm going to start at 25 and work my way up to 1. 25 is the SMU Mustangs. 24, the defending champs, the Michigan Wolverines. 23, the Illinois Fighting Illini. 22, the Pittsburgh Panthers. 21, the Missouri Tigers. Okay, this list I'm looking at does not look all that. Yeah, nah, we're gonna have to do this again. Okay, so SMU, I'm gonna start this back over. SMU was 25, Michigan 24, Illinois 23, Pittsburgh 22, Missouri 21. There's a tie at 19 for Indiana and Oregon. That's why it looked confusing. At 19. 18, Kansas State. 17, Boise State. 16, Utah. 15, Texas A&M. 14, BYU. LSU is at 13. There's a tie, Notre Dame for 12. Iowa State at 11. Clemson at 10. Don't know if I agree with that. Number 9 is Ole Miss. At number 8 is the Tennessee Volunteers. Number 7, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Number 6, the Miami Hurricanes. Georgia stays put at number 5. Ole Miss at 4. Oregon at 3. Ohio State at 2. And Texas at 1. What do you guys think about that? I want to know. Send me your comments when this episode of Monday Evening Quarterback is up tonight. I'm excited for what I have to preview this week on the college slate. Red River, but this time in the SEC. Yeah. Those games are always a shootout. Does Texas stick with Arch, or do they bring back Quinn for this game? And Oklahoma, I can't wait to see what this Oklahoma defense does against this Texas offense. You saw what they did to Tennessee, so I think they'll be up and ready to play against Texas. And then number 2, Ohio State against number 3, Oregon. These two have a little bit of history. They played in the first ever college football playoff national championship game. That's when Ezekiel Elliott just ran all over the Oregon defense. Then just a couple of years ago at the Shoe in Columbus, the Ohio State Buckeyes hosted Oregon, and Oregon went into Ohio and beat them. Excuse me. This is going to be a really interesting game. This is by far the best team that Ohio State will have seen up until this point. I can't wait to get my hands on those two. And that is all I have for college football. That was the first segment of the show. We're going to go to the phone lines, enjoy the music. Once again, this is Monday Evening Quarterback on Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, Blog Talk Radio, and the Nerdport Network. We'll see you back here soon.